Imagine walking down a city street in Chicago. The year is 1932. Storefronts are shuttered. Men in worn coats line up for bread, their faces hollow with hunger. Families huddle in apartments, wondering how to stretch a few coins for another week. The stock market has collapsed, banks have failed, and unemployment has soared to nearly 25%. Now imagine the fear. Not just fear of losing money, but fear of losing dignity, of losing the future itself. Yet, amid this despair, something remarkable happened. Communities pulled together. Neighbors shared food. Artists, writers, and ordinary people found ways to express resilience. Out of the darkest economic crisis in modern history came lessons that still echo today. So here's the question: what can the Great Depression teach us, not just about fear, but about hope? And how do those lessons matter for you, right now? The Great Depression began with the stock market crash of October 1929. But it wasn't just about Wall Street. It was the result of deep structural weaknesses, overproduction in factories, fragile banks, uneven wealth distribution, and a lack of safety nets. When the crash hit, panic spread. Banks failed, businesses closed, and millions lost jobs. Globally, the Depression reshaped politics, economies, and societies. In the United States, it lasted through the 1930s, only easing with the mobilization of World War II. But beyond statistics, it was a human story. Families uprooted. Farmers abandoned land. Children grew up in scarcity. And yet, it was also a turning point. The New Deal introduced social security, labor protections, and public works. The Depression forced governments and citizens to rethink what stability meant. It was a decade of hardship, but also of transformation. Let's break down the lessons in fear and in hope. Lesson 1. Fear can spread faster than facts. When the stock market crashed, fear became contagious. People rushed to withdraw savings, which caused banks to collapse even faster. This is a reminder that panic can magnify problems. You see it today in financial markets, in social media storms, even in everyday life. Fear doesn't just respond to reality, it shapes reality. But here's the nuance: fear isn't always irrational. For families in the 1930s, fear was survival. It kept them cautious, resourceful, and sometimes innovative. The challenge is distinguishing between fear that protects and fear that paralyzes. Lesson 2. Hope emerges in community. During the Depression, neighbors leaned on each other. Churches, local charities, and informal networks became lifelines. In rural areas, farmers pooled resources. In cities, people shared meals. This wasn't charity alone, it was solidarity. Think about that today. In moments of crisis, whether economic or personal, hope often comes from connection. The Depression teaches us that resilience isn't just individual grit, it's collective strength. Lesson 3. Innovation thrives in hardship. It might surprise you, but the Depression was a time of creativity. Hollywood's golden age blossomed in the 1930s. Swing music lifted spirits. Writers like Steinbeck captured the struggles of ordinary people. Even in scarcity, culture thrived. Economically, the New Deal sparked infrastructure projects, bridges, dams, schools, many still standing today. These weren't just jobs, they were investments in the future. The lesson: hardship can force innovation, pushing societies to rethink priorities and build lasting change. Lesson 4. Leadership matters. Franklin D. Roosevelt's fireside chats weren't just speeches. They were acts of reassurance. By speaking directly to citizens, he calmed fears and built trust. Leadership during crisis isn't about having all the answers. It's about communication, empathy, and vision. Contrast that with leaders who ignored suffering or minimized the crisis. The Depression shows us that leadership can either deepen despair or kindle hope. Lesson 5. Inequality makes crises worse. Before the Depression, wealth was concentrated at the top. Many families lived paycheck to paycheck. When the crash came, those without savings or safety nets suffered most. This inequality magnified the pain. Today, the lesson is clear: societies with stronger safety nets, fairer distribution, and inclusive policies weather storms better. Fear grows when people feel abandoned. Hope grows when systems protect the vulnerable. Lesson 6. Global impact cannot be ignored. The Depression wasn't confined to the United States. It spread worldwide, fueling political instability. In some countries, economic despair contributed to the rise of authoritarian regimes. In others, it spurred reforms. This global dimension reminds us that crises are interconnected. Fear can cross borders. But so can hope, through cooperation and shared solutions. Lesson 7. Ordinary people shape history. It's easy to focus on presidents and policies. But the Depression was also shaped by everyday choices. Families who migrated west in search of work. Workers who organized unions. Citizens who demanded change. Their actions mattered. They remind us that history isn't just written by leaders. It's written by people like you, facing fear, choosing hope, and pushing for better futures. Let's pause on one vivid story. In 1933, a young boy in New York watched his father lose his job. The family had no savings. They sold furniture, rationed food, and lived on the edge. But every Sunday, neighbors gathered for a communal meal. Each family brought what little they had: bread, beans, vegetables. Together, they created abundance. That boy grew up remembering not just the hunger, but the hope. He later became a teacher, telling students that resilience isn't about avoiding hardship, but about facing it together. Stories like this remind us, the Depression wasn't just numbers. It was human lives, shaped by fear, sustained by hope. Modern relevance. So why does this matter for you today? Because crises still happen. Economic downturns, pandemics, climate challenges. Fear is natural. But the Depression shows us that fear doesn't have to define the outcome. Hope, grounded in community, leadership, and innovation, can transform despair into progress. The bridges built in the 1930s still stand. The social protections created then still support millions. The cultural works born in hardship still inspire. The Depression teaches us that even in the darkest times, seeds of renewal are planted. The Great Depression was a decade of fear of hunger, of loss, of uncertainty. But it was also a decade of hope. Hope in neighbors, in leaders, in creativity, in resilience. Here's what you can carry forward. Fear is powerful, but it doesn't have to control you. Hope is not abstract, it's built in community, action, and vision. Crises reveal weaknesses, but they also open doors to innovation and reform. So when you face uncertainty, whether in your personal life or in the world around you, remember the lessons of the Depression. Fear is real, but hope is stronger when shared. The Great Depression wasn't just a tragedy, it was a turning point. And its greatest lesson is this: even in the hardest times, humanity finds ways to endure, to adapt, and to hope.